Welcome to another episode. Thank you guys for making it today. I feel like this is starting to become a thing where every time there's a conference, we book a studio and get good brains into the same room and have discussions. So, yesterday I was like talking with someone about communities in crypto, and I thought, what if there's a new person, new project in crypto or in the Interop ecosystem, and they start to question, how do I build a community, right? Like, how would people think about it? So I thought, let me get three builders in the ecosystem and get their thoughts on it, and just have a discussion about how do we build communities, what are some questions that might come up, and just see what we come out of this session with, right? So why don't we start with some introductions, and in that introduction I want to know, what's your favorite community and why?
Yeah, first of all, you should probably change your title at Li-Fi to research lead to podcast lead because it seems to be like what we're doing, like going on.
This is research.
Yeah, this is research. Yeah,
How to build communities, that's research.
100%, 100%. Yeah, obviously, Jumper community, favorite community. But other than Jumper, I really like Nillion and the Blind Warriors and what they're doing. At the moment, I think Off My Lawn does like a really sick job at engaging the community and getting them going. And Spiking Ads on Monad, like those guys have like great engagement, great community, always something going on. So like Nillion and Spiking Ads on Monad for me after Jumper is pretty sick.
But introduce yourself as well. Like, what do you do at Jumper, and why? What makes you qualified to talk about communities in crypto?
Yeah. So over the last couple of years, I think since 2022, even just before Jumper, been building community over at Li-Fi and Jumper, and recently moved into the marketing lead position role. But before that, been building community for 3 years, since the start of Jumper, basically.
Nice. And like, you were also doing audio, video recordings, and like you have a history of pretty much like speaking in public. So I think
Right.
like those are also core skills that you use today in building a community, and maybe we can like come back to it later. You can
Yeah,
go
for
next.
sure.
Yeah. So I think maybe a quick intro about me. So I lead BD and partnerships at Jumper. I think building a community in the industry is actually a very difficult thing that has to evolve with time as well. There's like different narratives that come in the industry. We see like a lot of pre-TGE or pre-mainnet ecosystems build very strong communities. Like you mentioned, Monad.
Yeah.
Chain built a very strong community early that had a lot of engagement. And they obviously do that by sort of generating the ecosystem hype involving a lot of the builders, a lot of like the different projects that are deploying there. But I think after the ecosystem's live, it's also very difficult to maintain the same sort of momentum with the same tactics. So I think like something that is interesting that is like the drop off in community, or like now that there's monetary value involved with a token and driving community that way. And I think like Aave has probably done something very good for like a mature project that have sort of got this like very strong tagline, like everyone's using in the industry, like just use Aave is like everyone's using that, like just use whatever project that they're from. And I think that like that's a testament to how strong their communities or their branding and marketing around that. And also it comes off like the trust factor, I guess, that comes with like the TVO.
What do you think
that they
worked
have.
for them specifically?
I think it's like the lindiness of like Aave, the product. So we were chatting on the way here in the Uber on the way here, like the product is like first and foremost the main thing. Like that's what we're engaging with. The community is like built around the product, and there's seeing as everything has like this monetary value and people are putting their money into it, you have to trust it. As soon as that trust is broken, the community sort of like will fracture from that. So I think Aave have built like able to build this strong community because of the trust factor around having how many billions in TVL that they have. So yeah, I think that like over time it goes from hype and speculation and points programs and all of these things that is very good early drivers of community to actually like, is the product good? Are people using it? And then that drives a community that is like a different subset of users, but also like longer lasting, I would say.
Awesome. You can tell us about yourself and your favorite community.
Yeah, it's a hard question. Before I get into that, my name is Tabasco. My real name is Ethan. My official title at Particle now, I guess, is COO. But I just
congrats on that.
Yeah, congrats.
I just talk shit on Twitter for the most part, and so this is my main day job, which has led me to spending a lot of time. Not really like, I don't know if we've necessarily tried to intentionally grow a community. I think it's happened somewhat naturally, which I think that's probably the better way to do it. But I think out of all the communities that I've seen, first of all, most communities, I hate this term community because when people say community, it's mostly, I think, bullshit of like people airdrop farming or whatever, like people that are clearly not there because they care about the product or whatever you're doing. They're there because they want some TGE airdrop, or they're there because they're farming a Kaido leaderboard or whatever. And these are not, there's no community here. This is just paid. Like, I think, what's his name? From Hyperlane. Did you see his tweet?
Yeah, no sleep, John.
Yes, he said that this is just prostitution essentially. He's right. I don't know why he apologized for this. I think he was like spot on with that
I
tweet.
think the timing was bad.
It wasn't. Yeah, I think people are angry at him because they're doing their airdrop and whatever. But he's totally right. I mean, the people are entitled to we deserve this much, and you didn't pay us enough for tweeting about Hyperlane or whatever. But he was right in that all the people that were complaining, these are not. If your community membership is conditional on the size of your airdrop or whatever, then you didn't give a shit about Hyperlane in the first place. And so this is, I think, a big problem that we have. Now, I think there are a few communities that stand out to me that are more product centric. And I really think that communities, especially post TGE, this is where you're going to see the most real, like, raw community members where they're there for a genuine reason, or at least a somewhat genuine reason beyond just airdrop farming. I think like Abstract actually has a pretty good, I know that they do points farming, that kind of stuff, but I think they have a pretty genuine community that likes their product because it's, I think, a relatively unique ecosystem. I think also, now these guys might be mostly farmers, but I think I like the Shogun community. Do you know Shogun? And
like
their
bear
whole
chain aligned.
yeah, they're bear chain aligned, but they're kind of like their own group. Like they have these sayings and these different things. I think they've actually kind of killed it at creating community. And I think a lot of their users are not all airdrop farmers. I think they have some genuine users because the Shogun is actually a good product, even though I think some people might brand them as competitors, but I think they've actually built a pretty cool ecosystem. And then also you have the OG communities like whatever, Dogecoin and whatever. And these guys are more like here because of the crypto fundamentals, which is important. But I think I'm tired of all the conditional community membership. And I think having a product focused community that is there because they are aligned with whatever you're building. But there's very few people that are like this. And so it's hard to build this up.
I was going to say as well, I think like one community when you're saying about that is the wealth effect, that if you can create that wealth effect after the TGE, like Hyperliquid have done, then I think that forges like a strong community. Like you mentioned Dogecoin or XRP or Cardano, like they have cult communities from people because they've made money and they're just like, these guys made me rich, I'm just going to like support them forever. And I think Hyperliquid in a way have done that as well, but the product is good.
At the same time.
Exactly. So I think like it relies on the product, but then if there is like this wealth effect that comes after TGE, then you can sort of like forge that.
Of course, like if you help people make money, like if you give me $1 million, I will be part of your community for sure.
Yeah.
So that helps, like the airdrops help. But okay, so like maybe zooming out, like going across the table, we have very different answers, right? Like Abstract, Shogun, these are new projects. So there's some sort of like experimental new energy around it. And then there's Aave on the other side of the spectrum, been here for like 5 years. There's Lindy effect. You almost feel like they represent crypto in a way. That's why everyone is kind of backing them to do well, right? But I want to zoom out and think about a community manager who has his like first day at an Interop project. How does he think about community? How does he define community, right? Like what is the first thing that he needs to do before starting any of the activities or like any of the experimental stuff, right? Like if you were in his position, what would you do?
Yeah. Sorry.
No,
I was
you go
going to say, interesting question, because I've got like an opinion about this, that I think Interop is probably one of the hardest verticals to build a community in because you don't have ecosystem, you're not aligned to any one ecosystem. So like on Jumper, we support 40 something chains. We can't align to one chain and say we are part of the Sonic ecosystem and have all of the builders there support us and co-market and do partnerships and all that with just them, because then you have all the other chains that you are not aligned with. So I think actually Interop is a very difficult vertical to build a community that leverages other, like you can't sort of like have the rising tide lifts all boats of the one ecosystem. So yeah, I think that's something to keep in mind, I guess, if you are trying to build an Interop community. But yeah, I'll pass you to John.
I mean, at the same time, like building an Interop community, and I think specifically for like us as like an aggregator where we partner with like lots of different bridges and chains and dexes and dex aggregators and whatnot, it does kind of like have the benefit of it's one bigger, larger interop community, you know, that a lot of our community members have exposure to other communities and bring them along, and, you know, like a lot of mishmash between the two. And I think
It's like it's a community incest.
yeah, it's like, well, hey, community incest, that's the tweets. But yeah, but for someone like starting out, like I'm a firm believer of like team-led community building, especially like in the early phases, because like no one gives a damn in the early phases for like you an early project, right? So you got to evangelize. You kind of got to be like your dream team out there, putting the word out with this is what we do, this is what we're about, and then you might get a little bit of interest from some people that will come around as well. And I think to really like value and lead those early adopters really well in the community and find the gold and skill set like within them, and just ask the question like, okay, so team is like really building and like shipping and being on the face of it. Engage with who's interested in the early days and be like, hey, so like what can you add to the pie? Like what would you add to the puzzle? And then build in that way. And what you'd likely find is that it's already people within the Interop ecosystem and circle, and they'll come with like existing ideas or maybe previous ideas that didn't work really well and have their take on it, and maybe even want to lead it and run with it. And in the early stages as a builder, it's all about empowering people to get involved and build community with you.
Got it. So, like, are you saying if you're a new project, probably try to find people within your team that other people can connect to, and then try to bootstrap the community through them?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's what I would do. So like hopefully you have like some S tier, A tier team members in the beginning already that already have some network effects going on. Start there and figure out like what you want your community to look like, how you want to position your community, and then build with the early builders.
I mean, that's a perfect example because I can't think of anyone else other than Tabasco that has done it better in the last like 18 months. So, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think having, there's a saying, and, most of my strategy actually was not an original idea for me. It was from Ekram, Ekram from
Yeah.
Celestia. He has this blog, and I always tell people to read it. He has this blog that goes through his beliefs around marketing. And one of the entries to his blog is how people connect with people better than they connect with brands. So you need somebody to represent some individual to represent your brand, and people can connect with that person. And so I actually was never active on Twitter before, maybe 2 years ago. I mean, I posted occasionally, but I was just not into it really. And then I just ramped it up to 100 and I just didn't shut up. And so that created this kind of effect where then I started to merge with kind of the particle brand itself, and I grew that. And so I always recommend people to look into how Celestia has done it, because Celestia they're not an interoperability brand necessarily, but they are an infrastructure brand that was very successful in not only building a narrative, but actually building a community around what is a relatively boring thing, like a DA layer. Like, how do you rally people around this? But they were very efficient doing this. But to answer the question directly, I think if I was a community manager at an Interop project and it was a purely B2B Interop project, I would probably quit and go to a B2C project because you need something tangible to get people to feel excited about.
Right.
I think it's extremely difficult, if not almost impossible, to actually create a community around an intangible thing that individuals have no connection with. As a B2B project, how do you build a community if all you offer is APIs and SDKs? You can build a community of developers maybe, but of general users, they have nothing to attach themselves to other than the promise of an airdrop. So like, I think Hyperlane is a fantastic product, but like, how do you maintain a community for that after TG? There's nothing for them to attach themselves to because there's no product. It's a developer facing innovation.
I mean, I feel like for B2B projects, it's maybe more about building a brand than building a community.
Right.
And for B2C projects, it's easier because you're directly interacting with users, right? So, and this probably goes back to like, how do you define a community? Would you say, like, I feel like Layer 0 has a community, right? But Layer 0 is similar to Hyperlane in the sense of like services, where one has a token, the other doesn't. Maybe, I don't know, like how to actually put that into organized thoughts. But in my head, it feels like Layer 0 has a community because I just see more and more people talk about them organically, perhaps. Like, how do you guys think about this? Like, for a B2B project, how do you build a community? Can you build a community? Should you even try?
I think like it's it's one of those terms that we use in the industry that just like is all encompassing, and I think it encompasses your brand and the actual people in your Discord that are submitting support tickets or that are like joining your poker night and all of that. So like we use the word community and it covers all of that. So I think like you say, like the Layer Zero example is a good one, that I think their brand and people speaking about them and like the token standard and all of these things is one aspect of it. I don't think we would like sort of categorize it as their users in their Discord that are doing things. So I think like it's something that we do in the industry all the time is just use like these catch-all terms for everything. But I do think like branding is super important, and like having mindshare, having people speaking about you, just whether you're a developer that's building a new layer 2 or whatever, or a new chain, and it's like, okay, well, I know Layer 0, I'm going to just get them to deploy and use OFT standard or whatever. That's important and impactful. So you still have to like position yourself in the market so that people are aware of that. And I think that it just happens that everyone gets all of that information from Twitter. So the sort of town hall that everyone, whether you're like B2C or B2B, is the same place. So we all just consume all of this content in the same format from the same location. So it all sort of just merges together.
Okay, so it's like one, probably having people that others can connect to, and then also focusing on your brand and messaging, like entire packaging, so that people can understand what you're doing and probably get behind the cause. And then like, so from your experiences, how did you guys get your first 100 or like first 50 community members? Like, do you think you have your first 100 core community members today?
Yeah, I think we do. I think we went through this phase though of we, and I retrospectively, I think it was probably not, at least like from a purist perspective, not the best way to do it, but we went through the typical route where you have points and farming and that kind of stuff. And we built a community through that, or a group of people that were farming our protocol to earn an airdrop. And like, actually, I don't think it's bad to have farmers in your community, or at least using your app, because they're helpful in some ways. They stress test things. They can actually bring in a lot of revenue in some cases. And so it's not a bad thing. But in terms of expecting these guys to stay after TGE, it just doesn't happen. We experienced this. We had, I think in our Discord today we have 600,000 people, which is insane. I mean, come on. How many of
flex.
How many of these guys are actually real? Like, and these are mostly, I think, bots that are farming our testnet way back then, or they're real people that were just trying to get some free airdrop or whatever. But I think, so I wouldn't consider that whole period ever have our first 100 real community members. Those are not real community members. And we've established this. But I think after TGE, it was clear to me who from that period was there genuinely, not because they wanted an airdrop. Even afterwards, like I had a lot of people that afterwards they said, hey, congratulations on TG. I really wasn't very happy with my airdrop, but I'm going to continue supporting you guys because I really love the product. And like, this is okay. Like clearly your intentions here are not because you want me to give you more money because this is over now, but they're there because they like the product and they connect with either me or my team or whatever. And they feel like they're a part of this sort of growth journey that we have. And so we, at this point, I think, I don't know if I can give it like 100 people necessarily, but there's maybe between like 60 and 70 people that are very consistently active on Discord or on Telegram or on Twitter. And especially if you include the whole international community, we probably have over 100 people that they are part of our community because of the product. Has nothing to do with the token. Usually they're also token holders. They bought it, they buy our token, they hold it because they believe in the mission or whatever. They believe in chain abstraction. They believe in Universal X or whatever app that we're producing. But not because of a financial reason. And so I think we didn't get those first 100, or at least it wasn't clear to me that we had those first 100 until after we launched TG and we filtered out all of the noise, essentially.
I think Jumper had a very similar experience, right? Like we have the loyalty pass and over time you could just see the same faces just interact with your tweets, your new products, new features, beta testers, and then you just connect on a human level. I feel like they can see that you're trying to do something genuine, and at some point they just become a part of the journey, right? So maybe Jordan, you can talk about like how did you connect with the Jumper community, because there's also the Jumper Ambassador program, there's also the loyalty pass, so there are different levers that you can pull at different times, right? So maybe go through your experience and tell us about like the first 100 community members that you feel like were really in it for the long haul.
Yeah, 100%. I think like over Jumper, we've had the benefit that we were working on Li-Fi like firsthand, and what we were doing at Li-Fi in the early stages was really pushing out a lot of educational content, and with the Li-Fi community, we were pushing out like different quizzes on interoperability, a lot of Arjune's early day articles, in the archives, and we really believe that interoperability is this thing that we believe in. We want our community to believe it, but we have to be education and research led on that. So we kind of partner with our community to like almost fully understand like why we're here to get our position in, why we're building, and through that process, we found people who were like really interested, really partaking in the engagements that we did. Then in early 2023, we get Jump Exchange going, early beta testing. The same people are around over a longer period of time, and you get to understand who's been around, who's participated, who's actually provided valuable feedback or like involvement within the community. And I think everyone has a journey. So I think one thing that's important to realize is that if we say community member, we assume that everyone is the same thing, just a community member. But I think it's so multifaceted that community members are in different shapes and different forms, and it's actually okay if some contribute a little bit less, and it's okay if some contribute a little bit more within your community, and to recognize that and to be like, okay, as an ambassador, I see this skills in you, the strength in you, a gap in our team that you can fill. Maybe it's a region for reach, maybe it's a skill set because we're not TikTok bros, so we needed to get like a TikTok ambassador on. And then you kind of, a good community manager, community lead can identify the top 100 people and core members next steps. So like if you can see the next steps, you can start pulling levers on, okay, you'll be a great ambassador, or you actually will be hired from the community. So like Matis, who's doing BD with you, and a bit of marketing still and a bit of support, because we wear many hats at the same time. He was hired from the community. So was Bulla. So there's that potential as well.
Yeah. I mean, the common thing that I'm hearing is like having a cause that's bigger than your project, right? Like people probably think that chain abstraction makes sense. Let me listen to Tabasco and see what he's building and probably get behind that. People think that Interop makes sense, and then they get aligned with like Li-Fi, Jumper, and all the different projects, right? So that's a pretty good takeaway, I feel, where maybe building a community is less about like point system, but actually building a brand and having a bigger cause than your own project, right? And then probably just like connecting with people on some level, because at the end of the day, we've hired so many people from the community because like they're already aligned with us, they're already in the loop with what we're talking about, and then you genuinely start thinking that the other person is like a good person. You can probably work with them, and that's the biggest thing that you can do, right? Like hire from within the community. And I feel like more projects should probably optimize for that.
Yeah, and like something that's worked really well for us, if we go back to the early stage and top 100 or 20 or maybe the top 2 if you're just starting out, is actually taking the time out to block your calendar off every week and like, you know what, I'm going to devote 30 minutes every Tuesday, every Thursday to meet community members, 10-minute calls. Like they really like appreciate that, because so often, we see people building in crypto and, teams on pedestals where we really shouldn't be. So if you can like bridge the gap, excuse the pun, and like really involve your community and early users on like a person-to-person, face-to-face level, it really goes a long way.
So would you guys use a point system if you were to do it all over again?
If I were to do it all over again, I mean, it depends on the requirements. The reason why a lot of people use point systems is because it gets you to where you need to be for things like exchange listings. And so this is a requirement for some reasons that, are beyond just community building. But in terms of that specific goal, I of course wouldn't, because it dilutes the value. And so I think I absolutely wouldn't, no.
What about you?
I would. I think that point systems are very powerful if used correctly, and this is probably going to be a controversial take, but I think Friendtech actually had a very interesting model before they completely rugged everyone. But it allows you to completely stress test the product with like a lot of users in a short amount of time and get invaluable product feedback. Like I think going from 0 to 1, if you were just to start trying to build a community from like yelling into the void on Twitter and like trying to drum up support and engagement would be very hard. Point system can like speed run that first like cold start problem. It allows you to stress test the product, receive a lot of product feedback, but it needs to be like designed in a way that there's actual goals around it, not just like this infinite points program that users are unaware of like what will happen, and there's like no real strategy behind it whatsoever. So I think that points programs, if used well, are very powerful initially, but then there needs to be like either a greater vision. So like we have the loyalty pass that has a much greater vision beyond just like what you see on the UI of like the XP, and that is what we're building towards, and like positioning the product around, and like partnerships and BD and all that is all around that. But then I think there's the others that will just run points programs that just run infinitely
with no incentive.
With no incentive, yeah. And like they saturate their purpose. They're not really gaining anything in terms of like product feedback now, and then it becomes like almost detrimental. But I think for like the initial bootstrapping phase, like points programs have proven to be super.
I think I have another question on that, right? Like, not even related to points, but whenever there's an airdrop, there's this sort of expectation from the community, right? Like you were talking about the hyperlane case, where maybe we would not define everyone who is tweeting about them as a community member, but they have put in the time, so they're probably expecting something in return, right? How do you break this tension? Is there a right answer, or should you just like accept the fact that there will be people who will not be happy, but there will be people who will be happy about it? And if your intention is right, people will understand long term that you're trying to do something right? So how do you guys think about this?
Yeah, I think people there's not, I don't know if there's been a single airdrop maybe other than Hyperliquid where there's like a collective like this was a fantastic, like everybody was happy. But you know, with Hyperliquid it was very straightforward because you're putting forward capital, and so you can quantify based on how much you actually traded. Whereas things like testnet and other things that are largely intangible, at least in terms of actually assigning a dollar value to it, these are things that you have to decide how much you allocate to these guys. And they all have different expectations. Like, okay, I checked into this airdrop or to this testnet, and I did a few transactions every day for for a few weeks. I deserve 5 figures. Okay, well, hold on. This is a ridiculous expectation. You could go work a job and you're not going to make that much. And so this is ridiculous. But people are going to be upset if they get anything less than that. And so you can never satisfy everybody. And so I think if you're going to do an airdrop and you have whatever points or anything like that, then you have to expect that people are going to be upset unless you're Hyperliquid, but this is a very rare case. And we found that we actually did have a good chunk of people that were upset after RTG, and I totally expected this. I actually expected more people would be than they actually were. It actually ended up not being that big of a challenge. Like some airdrops happen and they have this reputation permanently of like, oh, their airdrop was like Zora. I think that they are always going to have this reputation of they had a shitty airdrop, and I was worried that this was going to be like a thing that we're gonna have to deal with forever, but it really wasn't. Like a week after, nobody gave a shit anymore because whatever. Some people were happy. A lot of people got really big airdrops because they actually put up capital and they use Universal X or whatever. But I have a question for you guys with things like the loyalty pass or whatever and other points programs. Do you think this sets an expectation for users whenever they use it, that there's going to be some TGE or there's going to be some larger reward for them? And do you think that this will be difficult to combat in the future if that changes?
So I think like Rob will give a more broad answer on that, but I think the expectation will always be there unless we can clearly define what our program is. Because if we just look at it, I don't believe we run a points program, but if people perceive it as a points program, of course there'll be that 100% expectation that, okay, this is leading to a jumper airdrop, for example, that will happen. Right. But if we can clearly define and position it for what it actually is, which Rob will touch on in a bit, the expectation will still be there, but not entirely as if it was just seen as a full-on points program.
Yeah. And like the vision, and I think that this is probably something that has been a little bit clouded between people that are expecting an airdrop and then what our sort of internal vision for the loyalty pass is what it is designed to do is basically grade people or rank our users in terms of like how active they are in DeFi. And what this enables us to do is then promote these users or market these users to partners that are looking to attract like power users. Like a lot of people in the industry are building to onboard the next 1 billion users. They're trying to like compete with centralized exchanges. There's like so many different subsets that people are trying to attract. who we're trying to build for is like the power users that are in crypto today that move volume across chains. They interact with different DeFi apps. They are like users that are spending money or like driving economic value to all the different protocols and chains and ecosystems. So they're like the ideal user that everyone wants and the highest to convert because they have money, they have experience, they are on-chain users. So for us, the loyalty pass is very, very important for us to now identify these users because of like the time component, the volume component, the chains explored, like all the different aspects that go into like growing your loyalty pass level. Over time, the power users rise to the top. And then now we can partner with different ecosystems and say like, you want users and you want valuable users. You can run a campaign on any of like these campaign protocols that like here, spin it up and you can get 100,000 users or wallets that interact with you that are like not going to stick around. Or we can give you our top 5,000 or our top 10,000 and you can directly incentivize them because they've like proven that they're worth those incentives and they will drive economic value to you. And we see like very, very good conversion for this with our partners. We see like a lot of TVL go to chains, good fees driven to their like protocols that we partner with. And I think that this is like the vision for the loyalty pass is actually becoming more of like your on-chain footprint is measured. And then from there, we can like leverage that and like distribute those users to partners. So it's not the XP that you see on the UI is like just the measuring tool for that. We could like measure it as in like a DeFi power score or something like, but there has to be some measuring way. And I think like it has become a bit clouded between like this points program leads to an airdrop compared to this points program proves what you do on chain or how active you are and how valuable you are. And then that indirectly or even directly provided like incentives provided by partners actually is more valuable than what any airdrop would be.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think like,
I mean, there's also a reward for the users, right? Like even in the Web2 world or like the outside real world, if there's a point system, loyalty system, I'm not expecting to get paid in equity, right? I'm expecting to get paid in
discounts or something.
like just give me a discount or like a better experience, better service, like some sort of like freebies maybe. And connecting the Jumper loyalty pass to that, like the main goal at the end of the day is that these users that rise to the top also get rewarded in some way.
Yeah.
Like it's a win-win sort of situation. So I feel like the expectation with a point system or a loyalty pass, whatever, should not be binary in saying that, oh, there's a score, so I will get an airdrop related to that score. But it's more comprehensive and like more holistic in a way that, okay, there might be an airdrop, there could be an airdrop, but then in the meantime, there are different ways we can make sense of this score and get people to like coordinate around it, like get different parts of the ecosystem, chains, DeFi projects, and the users to coordinate around this system that we have built, and then I don't know, create a win-win sort of a solution.
yeah.
Yes.
Like we all flew here, right? Like no one here lives in Dubai, but like we all flew here. I know for a fact, like I chose my airline provider because I'm like have my sort of points program, my miles program with them. So it's like I don't expect Emirates or Qantas or whatever from Australia to give me an airdrop for using them, but I'm collecting this because then you like get the points and you can use it on flights or you get some like benefits for that. And that's sort of like what we're trying to build for DeFi is like you build your reputation, you're rewarded for that. It doesn't have to be with like the airdrop. And I think like Hyperliquid, like you mentioned as well earlier, Tabasco, like we can't replicate that. They didn't raise any funds. They're like a bootstrap team. They distributed 30% of the tokens to an airdrop. Like that is not feasible for some projects, like especially if you have raised funds privately, you either get pushed to launch at a higher FDV and then the airdrop's worth more, but then everyone just sells it and the token price goes down and people are annoyed. So I think like projects are stuck between a rock and a hard place. You either launch at a high FDV, which makes your airdrop worth more, but then the chart's down only and tokens wrecked and everyone's upset anyway, or you launch at a fair FDV, then potentially investors are upset, community is upset because the airdrop that they get is worth a lot less, and then you have to still grind like to hopefully the token price goes up or it still goes down and then like you're struggling there as well. So I think like it's super difficult to try and make everyone happy with it with an airdrop, but yeah, That's sort of like the points programs.
And then, like, if you were to start today, what are a few things that you would not do at any cost? Like, avoid at any cost possible. Just run as far away as possible.
Oh,
Just
shit.
anything to do with just complacency. Like, you cannot be complacent. We were talking about momentum and drive, and funnily enough, surfing a lot before like this meeting over here, and it's almost like a wave. Like, it takes so long for that wave to like build up, but once you got that wave of momentum, like, just building that momentum in the early stages, don't be complacent. You got to stay curious in your community building and creative.
Okay, but that's still like a little generic. So I'm looking for like specific things that as a community manager, you should just avoid at this point in the ecosystem. So in my head, something like, I don't know, follow or retweet for XYZ, like, avoid at all costs. Like, don't do this at this point. People are tired. We don't want to do any of that stuff. So maybe something on those lines.
Yeah, I think I was gonna say don't. I can't say it. Anyways, I don't think you need to heavily incentivize people to talk about your project, I guess is what I'll say. I think
Right.
I think you can get natural engagement on Twitter, and you can generate some sort of like, some personality or whatever. You don't need to like heavily incentivize people on this front. I think it's okay, but you're gonna get, and this also ties into what you mentioned. Like, I think it's very clear when you have fake engagement, and when like all of the people talking about you on Twitter and all of your core retweets and all of your replies are clearly bullshit. Like, it's okay. Maybe these are real accounts somewhat, but these guys don't know what they're talking about. They're saying, oh, I don't know, I won't call out anybody specifically, but there's a lot of tweets recently and like announcements where I look at their core retweets and it's like all of the same taglines being said. These guys don't know what they don't know what the fuck the whole protocol is about, but they're just saying it.
We're also in the age of AI, right? So it's so easy to produce bad content. So if you incentivize people to write more about you,
It's just slop.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, it
waste.
doesn't mean it's like good stuff.
exactly.
And so, and I think this is a big thing. Like, just try to get natural content, and we've done some incentives for people to tweet, but I think it's just it's better to get people that are genuinely interested that will write on their own. Or if you're gonna pay somebody to tweet, pay somebody that knows what they're talking about and is not just like using ChatGPT or whatever. And the other thing I think, and this is a learning, I guess, a mistake that we might have made many years ago, is please don't bot your metrics or your Twitter following or whatever. I think right now we have 800,000 followers on Twitter, which is like, I mean, you can have a genuine follower count. I think this is something that most projects we did the same thing. They run campaigns or whatever, where, like you said, it's like follow us and you can engage, do these different things, or reply or do these different. And this is, everybody can see through this, and it's ingenuine. It's not a real representation of your attraction. And so I think authenticity. And I was talking to somebody about this at the abstract brunch yesterday. I said the only way to grow now, and I think there's been this shifting playbook over time of, okay, maybe you want to do galaxy campaigns, whatever, do things that can get you some nice numbers, but I think especially recently, the only thing that people really value is, and especially with things like AI or whatever, the most valuable thing is authenticity. And if you can get people to authentically engage with you, to authentically talk about you, if you get 100 people that are genuine versus 100,000, whatever bullshit core retweet spammers and followers, the impact of those small group of people is much more significant than getting your huge grifter KOL to mention your name a few times, or getting Mario Nawfal to mention you on a Twitter space. These are things that you don't need, and so it's a waste of money. And I think it's a huge mistake that a lot of people make. Way more community managers make this than I think is reasonable.
Yeah, I was going to say the old come in and say GM in the Discord every day and get a role. Like, I think like the Discord role days are over, like grinding for all of those. And I think that they also set unrealistic expectations for people to get airdrops. Like, I've seen people complaining on Twitter of like, I got all these roles and they didn't get an airdrop allocation. So I think like those sorts of things that are very low value, low like effort, and people still expect something from it. And I also think like it's interesting actually, Cato's brought in like this new phase of engagement, and you can almost see on your timeline as soon as someone starts doing a Cato campaign,
You can pick it up.
there's people like yapping about them, and I'm like, oh, why are these people talking about this protocol now? And then you see actually like they're just farming yaps. So I think like the meta changes, and potentially it's valuable at the start, but then it, like everything in the industry, it just becomes saturated, and then it has no it loses like its effect. So I think like we've also looked into that as well. You see the projects that start these Cato campaigns, they'll get a lot of users or like a lot of people will deposit, but it's not high amounts. Like I'm not going to name any projects, but there's not people depositing millions and millions of dollars into whoever's running these campaigns. It's like maybe 30,000 users that are depositing between $100 and $500. So they're like testing it out, but
It's more for the apps.
yeah,
than
you can
anything
see
else,
like
yeah.
there's engagement there, but whether that actually converts to genuine users that are using your product over time is yet to be seen. And I think potentially some will, but over the next sort of like 6, 9, 12 months, potentially this will just become like less engagement and the whole thing sort of gets watered down and then it moves on to the next meta.
Jordan, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, 2 good points. Pretty simple for me. Like, just don't stop doing the basics and like really focus on keeping the community and product line and what's being developed in product like really, really close. Like, don't just because you've seen some growth, just because you've got like a few 100,000 followers, don't forget that it's the people and the users that we're building this for. And you can sometimes have a lot going on, a lot of announcements, a lot of things happening. Make sure you're focused on the user. Keep the feedback loops happening. Yeah, especially in the Interop space, they're very attentive to what's new, what's going on, whether it's a UI update, whatever it is experience-wise. So don't stop doing the basics just because you've grown a little bit.
Awesome. I think this was super useful. Thank you all for like your time. I feel like anyone who's trying to build a community can probably take some advice from this conversation, and I hope it's useful. So thanks a lot for doing this.
Thanks for hosting.
you.
Thank you. Yeah.